Hi, everybody, and away we go with another edition of the Stampede Wrestling Show.
Welcome, everybody, to Heartbeat Radio. I'm your guest host, Johnny Mantell. With us tonight, of course, the ever legendary Bruce Hart. Bruce, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Johnny. It's nice to be back, and thanks for coming on and being our guest host tonight. You always do a ass-kicker of a job, so I'm looking forward to tonight. I'm told we got a Texas legend, one of your and my old buddies, the great Terry Funk, on tonight. So,
I'm not even gonna hold him off. I know he's chomping at the bit, waiting to get on with us. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest with us tonight. As you said, the legendary hardcore wrestling, whatever you want to say about him, the legendary Terry Funk. Terry, how are you tonight?
Doing great. Couldn't be doing any better. How could I be doing any better than talking to you two guys? A couple of great guys that are in the business that I always enjoyed and had a great time with. And it's a pleasure being here tonight.
Thanks very much, Terry. I appreciate it. What's going on in your world these days? You had a chance to catch up with you a while back, but never really got a chance to touch bases with you on things in your own part of the world. So
things going pretty good. You know, the family's doing great. I'm doing great. I was just crushed about Bob Geigel passing away. It was a link. It was a link to my father that there's not that many links between that knew my father and knew me, and we were
he was like
together, and it's just he was like a member of the family. He really was, and
he sort of went side
Stu,
by
you
side.
know, I mean, Stu was one of those links between my family and all of Canada.
Yeah, all those guys kind of came up around the same time, though. Almost sort of made their mark in the just after World War II, and they were all amateur. Your dad and my dad, and
and all of them were in that war too. You know, a great many of them were. You know, were in the war and fought their ass off for our country.
Yeah,
you know, and did a damn good job of it, and came back and made a great bunch of citizens. You know, and kept this world pretty good shape up until now.
Yeah, and they worked their ass off.
I'm not so sure it's in great shape.
No, you and I were discussing that with all those idiots with ski masks cutting people's heads off and some of the other crap going on just in and out of our countries too, you know. And it makes you wonder, you know, they did, you know, pay the ultimate price to, you know, pave the way for their countries to be in half-decent shape. And it seems like the inmates are running the asylum and all the insanities.
I think it's a good possibility. And I think we better reverse that situation pretty fast.
I got a question. You know, we always talk about the connection, you know, about like Terry, your dad, and Geigel, and Stu, and probably, you know, the Ed McLemores and Gagne and those
Ricky
guys.
Starr and
was there somebody
all the great guys?
Was there somebody that was connected with all them that got all them started and involved? Was there a name there that pushed all them forward a little bit? You know what I mean? I mean, like, you know, I mean, you talk about, you know, we always talk about the Dungeon and the Hart Foundation and all the guys that came out of there. We talk about all the guys that come from, you know, out of the Amarillo territory, all those guys that came that had the Funk connection or the Hart connection. Was there connection with your dad and all those guys in that generation before that? The
true connection with all of those people we've been talking about that they were all extremely tough son of a bitches.
Yeah.
And they truly were. And all of them could do more than handle themselves. And what they were is they were all the MMA of today running around in the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, because that's what it was at that time. That's where the tough guys had to go. And that's where the
most
tough
of them,
guys
funny
went.
enough, were pretty quiet. They weren't loudmouths or like I met your dad and Geigel, and I met guys like Dick Hutton and Danny Hodge and Gordienko,
Mike DiBiase, Gordienko,
Mike
and Ray Gunkel, and on and on and on. And
Ray
Ricky
Wright,
Starr, what a hell of a guy he was. He was a tough
Jim
little
Wright,
son of a bitch.
And none of them ever seemed to say much. You know, I'd hear that Gordienko or Bill Miller or
oh my gosh,
or Werner, you know, those guys were, but not too many of them blew their own horns or anything.
I think those guys, you know, there was an old saying, something like, you know, you didn't have to talk about it if you could, right? I mean, a lot of guys that talk about how bad and tough they are really sort of pumping air into their chest so they can be that way. And a lot of those guys that were legendary for being so, you know, hard, not really hardcore, but, you know, knuckles to the ground and getting after it, those guys didn't have to talk about it. They just did it, right? I mean, when that's sort of
Yeah.
And very few of them were cheap shot artists or bullies. You know, I never ever heard anyone ever say anything about Geigel or Dick Hutton or Stu or Dory Sr., Ray Gunkel or any of those guys taking liberties.
Let's not forget him.
Luthez, too, you know. I never ever heard anyone talking about any of them stiffing somebody under the guise of working or, you know, breaking somebody's leg just for the hell of it or some damn thing. You know, there was sort of a code of honor amongst that breed too, you know, where there was a few guys that deserved to get their asses kicked, you know, the Buddy Rogers types, you know, I heard, you know.
Oh, you know, that's a very funny thing that you mentioned that about deserve to get their asses kicked, you know, is the ones that deserve to get their asses kicked, and the one that deserved to get their legs broken got their legs broken and got their asses kicked.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the way it was.
And
it was a different world, and but it evolved, and we evolved, and the reason we evolved is because we wanted to, which is absolutely necessary, is we wanted to put a butt every 18 inches. And that's what we had to do to stay in existence, is to sell tickets, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And we evolved, and we've evolved to today with a reason for it to evolve that way. And what it is, it's because it's what the people want and what they demand. And that's what we are. The people dictate to us what wrestling is.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. Although, Terry, you know, when I go to shows, especially independent shows, I mean, I haven't been to a WWE show in quite a while, but when you go to the independent shows, I know so many people walk up to me and will say to me as I'm leaving the arena or leaving the armory or whatever it may be, and they'll say, God, we wish wrestling would come back, that real wrestling like you guys used to do in the 80s, you know. And when somebody says that to me, I understand that the ticket buyers are running what Vince is doing today, but I think there's another group of ticket buyers out there that come back and watch the old style wrestling. I really do.
Well, I think that they are, and I think they are watching the old style wrestling today. And you know what the old style wrestling today is, don't you?
No,
sir. The MMA.
Okay.
The MMA. What we did is we evolved. We evolved from being total wrestling, total shoot in the 1900s, in early 1900. And if you could run a rope between 1900 and 2015, stretch it tight and run along that rope there, and had wrestling evolving, it evolved from 1900, when it was truly wrestling, to 2014, and it's total entertainment. We were all somewhere along that rope.
My dad was broken in by this old guy named Jack Taylor, who was, he and Frank Gotch were Farmer Burns's two main guys back in the 1890s and the early part of the 20th century. But my dad told me that they were like workers back then, but everyone went to far greater lengths to protect the business, and anyone that was smartening up the marks or breaking kayfabe or whatever the hell, they had to pay some serious consequences for it. It was a pretty, different world. But my dad told me the MMA stuff, that was, the business was about like that back in the World War I in the 1920s. And he said all the guys were like that. They all had the cauliflower ears, and there was no high spots or not too many gimmick matches or not too many things like that. It was pretty much, about like MMA without the cage, And my dad told me he went through the ringer, as he called it, for years, and with Taylor and all these old shooters stretching the shit out of him. He said it was sort of, sink or swim. He said he finally started getting tough enough to, fight back and hold his own with them, and then finally could stretch some of them. And I remember hearing him and Lou Thez and some of those guys talking, and Thez said he had to go through the same back in the 30s or whatever, as just part of the deal, and you either sort of rose above it or you, didn't make the grade. And I think that's part of the problem with today, most of the guys, unfortunately, I don't think they go through that dues paying, so they don't have that much respect for it or for themselves, or, and it comes out in the wash, the marks don't have that much respect for it either, they see guys
what we have evolved to is we have totally evolved all the way along that road to 2014. And what we have become is we have become exactly what the ticket-paying person wants. And that's our business and what it will be and always will be. But there's actually two forms of the business, and the other one is it's the MMA, and there's a lot of great guys and a lot of guys from our business that are doing well in the MMA today. It's just it's just a different world. It's a different world out there, but yet it's the same. I don't know. That's difficult to explain that, but it is. The MMA is the same as our business, and we're the same as him.
I got to throw in one little comment here about that. And
the main thing that we're both after is buck.
Yeah. And back in the old days, right? The sportscasters and the news writers, they all typed with typewriters, and now they got tablets and phones and smart this and smart that. And, and it's like I think Terry and we talked about it, and I know Bruce and I talked about it this past week ago. In Mesquite, they had a big show, and the Von Erich boys flew over and wrestled at that show in Mesquite. And before the night was over, there was a picture on the internet of the boys that wrestled the Von Erich boys, and them and Kevin all hugging each other, taking a picture together after the match, but before the night was over. And I think that's how the business has evolved, where social media has controlled some of it as well. And I think that, because I really, as I watch what Vince is doing up there, and as I watched, the Sunday night they have this Diva show with the girls, which is, to me, is great entertainment. I think it's a great show.
It's a wonderful show.
But then they don't follow that on Monday night when they do their wrestling on Monday night, it's like they don't follow what they did on Sunday at all. And I just wonder to myself, has social media gone so far that they don't care what they do and when they do it, or is somebody just not paying attention to the clock and knowing that it strikes 8, we got to put an 8 up on the wall? As good a show as they have on Sunday night on a not on their network and not on a some sidewalk entertainment network that a lot of people watch, they got a really good show, and yet they don't follow that storyline that they have on that show on Monday night when they have their other show, and it's sort of confusing to me, and I don't know where the disconnect is. The thing about selling tickets or selling pay-per-views or whatever it is, that hasn't changed in this business. Now, there's a lot of independent groups out there that don't have a concept on selling tickets and filling up buildings and doing that. They're just doing it so they can be a promoter or a wrestler or be involved. But the real people that are doing it, it's still about selling that ticket. It's just how you get that job done.
I'm not sure that Vinny and them, I think a big part of their problem, among other things, is they got too many cooks in the kitchen, too many people passing the buck, and not that much accountability. When something goes well, they all take bows, but when things, when they shit the bed, which is quite often, they usually point fingers and pass the buck and maybe fire some flunky that was going to get fired anyway and make but it seems to be, it drives me nuts when I see them they're pushing a guy like Brock Lesnar and some of that. At the same time, they got this Adam Rose and a bunch of idiots with bunny costumes and whatever coming to the ring, and Hornswoggle pretending he's something, and the Great Khali and all this other shit, and one negates the other. But whoever's booking Brock Lesnar and pushing that, I'd have trouble believing they're the guy pushing the bunny costume or Hornswoggle or the Divas or the Great Khali and some of the other, I know back in the day, you go into the dressing room and Amarillo or whatever, there was only one booker, one guy calling, he had all the finishes, or it's the same everywhere. If you had a football team where you had the coaches calling this and another coach is, calling for some gimmick play and another one's watching the cheerleaders and all this other, you won't be having a winning team. And it seems like that's a big part of the problem with Vinny and them. They don't, whether they want to take people to take them seriously or laugh at them or think they're a soap opera or that the girls got big boobs or whatever. There doesn't seem to be any. I bet if you asked somebody in there what is your main direction or what are you seeking to accomplish, you probably get 10 different answers. And most other things, I don't think he could succeed at that. It's a testimony to the inherent popularity of the business that they've succeeded with all the, mistakes that have been made and all the embarrassments that they've rendered. But at the same time, I'm not sure if the future is that solid.
I remember one time asking when Terry and I were someplace, and I was asking him questions about being NWA champion and stuff, and I'll never forget Terry saying to me that he knew exactly his time frame as champion. So I'm wondering if today, and we all know back in the day when guys were booking territories, they were 3, 6, 8, 9 months out planning their strategy of what they were doing and what they're doing. Terry, do you think that the WWE today has as long-range plans with exactly what they're doing as you did when you were champion?
That's a pretty tough question. The one thing that I do know is that what they have up there is they have somebody that is running things, and I know who is turning the key on the engine and starting that engine and purring on down the road. and he is an absolute maniac. He's a fool. He's an idiot. He's a devious individual. Now, who could that be other than the one person that would try to take over everything in its entirety and possibly do it is none other than that fat, overbearing, obnoxious, egg-sucking dog, Dusty Rhodes.
Wow.
Now that's who's up there acting like a fool, acting like he knows everything, being somebody that he isn't. He is the one that is up there that is pushing the buttons. He doesn't even know which buttons he's pushing, but it's Dusty Rhodes that has gotten Vince McMahon's ear, and he has bent it all the way over and cauliflowered the damn thing to where he can't even hear what other people are saying. That's what's happened up there. It's that fat, overbearing, obnoxious, egg-sucking dog, Dusty Rhodes, that is pulling all of the crap up there. He's pulling all of the strings. That's who it is. Nobody knows that. He's got his two kids. What are they? They're the super tag team champions of the world today. Is that right?
Stardust, Goldust.
Stardust and Moondust. I don't give a damn what their names are. Dusty Rhodes has taken over from Vince McMahon. It is no longer Vince McMahon running the country. It is Dusty Rhodes with his idiot ideas and his abnormal actions and his perverted views on this world today. That's who's trying to run things out of New York, is that fat egg-sucking dog from Florida. And he's got that telephone hot every day. He's got that hunter's ear. He's got that, what is Vince's daughter's name? My gosh.
Stephanie.
Stephanie. That's who it is. He's got that Stephanie running around, jumping through a hoop. How does he do that? How can he possibly do that when he's a goddamn moron and always has been? But no, he's got everybody's ear. Dusty Rhodes is running the country. He's ruling the country.
What do you figure is going to happen, Terry? Like at some point they,
the
crash
best
and
thing
burn?
that ever happened to our business would be for that SOB to eat too many burgers and have a heart attack. That would be the best thing that could happen to our country in this day and age. That's the best thing that could happen to wrestling. Hell, it's probably the best thing that could happen to the world.
Well, I hope I didn't get your blood pressure up too much there. Now, I wouldn't
My
dig
God,
into that.
you got my blood pressure up because I know, I can feel it. It's in the air. I can smell it. I can sniff it. It's Virgil Reynolds. Virgil Reynolds. That's who it is running the world today. When was the last time you saw Vince on TV? It had to be 9 months ago, 10 months ago. Somebody has locked him up, put him in a closet where he belongs. I'll admit that. But who put him in the closet? We know who put him in the closet. The American Dream put him in the closet. That's who put him in the damn closet. That's how sharp he is. You got to remember that. That moron was flying around in a goddamn gigantic jet in 1960 or whenever it was, 1965 or 70. I don't know when it was. It was whenever there was a bunch of idiots down there in Atlanta, and he was one of them. And he had them flying all over the country in a jet, spending fortunes on everybody, running the damn company. He ran it all right. He ran it. He ran it right into the ground. Is where he ran it. That's where Dusty Rhodes ran it.
Well, then I have to ask you something, because I hear a rumor about what they're working on.
I can talk like him too. Say, where you been, Terry? What you doing? Well, I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm trying to make a buck out here while you're on Easy Street, Dusty. That's where he is, on Easy Street.
You think Dusty's going to come back and work?
How could he possibly come back and work? He could He could never work. He never did work. He doesn't know how to work.
Okay, well then
how could he come back? He might get in the ring, but it's not going to be working.
I'm sorry about my semantics there. I said that wrong. I need to. They had me be an auctioneer last night, so my lips are sort of bouncing back and forth. So I apologize for that. Yeah. So you're saying Dusty's going to get back in the ring?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. He's got some amazing visions. You know, he's got visions of going right on through, right on through the whole group of them. You know, he has visions of running over everybody in the company.
I remember back in the 80s, and you probably remember it too, Terry, but Dusty was then with, I don't know who, Barnett or whoever was running against Vinny back in those days, and they were doing all kinds of stuff to kind of mock Dusty. You know, I remember they brought that black guy in and called him Virgil, and then I was told just to piss Dusty off, you know, and then when they did finally bring Dusty in, they had this big fat black girl named Sapphire that was kind of supposed to be his valet, and I was told that was...
Well, I'll tell you something about Sapphire. She really had the hots for him. I could never figure that out.
I was told that was almost kind of by design. That was to kind of piss him off.
I think she really had the hots for him, you know. I don't know what the situation was there.
But, yeah, you just hear rumors, you know, and... Where do you see things going, Terry? Do you think that finally somebody will open their eyes, or it'll just continue to go that direction?
All right, I'm going to stop my bullshitting again. I'm going to tell you the truth. I really think that they're headed in a good direction. I don't think that they're headed in the wrong direction. I think that they've got a very good bunch of people. And I think that there's a lot of them that they are going the right way. They really are. They're following the public. They're following what the public wants, which is very different from what it wanted before. Very different from anything that we ever did. And I, just being a silly idiot there for a little while, I enjoyed it very much. Thank you, people out there, for putting me up there acting so silly. But I think that they are headed in the right direction, and the direction is it's the direction that the people want. You know,
I often wonder what direction the people...
It's what they demand and what they want and what they'll come through the turnstile for. That's what our business is, and that's what it's always been, and that's what it'll continue to be in.
I'm not sure whether the public knows what the hell they want anymore, though they've had so much...
Well, you know, that's what you're saying is probably a very, very, very truthful statement, that they don't know what they want, and they really don't. And that's, it's pretty much of a different world out there, and I think we understand it, and I think everybody pretty much understands it, but
I know back in the day, Terry,
I don't think you can.
I think back in the day, I remember you and I have had that conversation too, but my dad told me back in the late 40s, early 50s, he used to call it the Jack Pfeffer syndrome, but he said there was a bunch of these kind of promoters that were going overboard on the gimmicks, and they had a little bit of success with Gorgeous George and some of the the lady wrestlers and the midgets and the freaks and geeks and stuff. And but my dad said, you know, it started getting too far out, and he said finally the old school types like himself and your dad and some of those other old school types, the Steckers maybe and the Crockett's and some of them, said we got to steer it back to the middle of the road, where people take it seriously, where wrestling's the main theme, not bullshit or tits and ass or, freaks and geeks and bullshit. And my dad said that sort of sanity prevailed, and they kind of had the strap on a guy like Luthez, and they had kind of a return to the middle of the road, and that sustained it, And I remember people like yourself and your brother Dory and Pat O'Connor and guys like that. They were the guys that were sort of the the guys wearing the belts and all were the the real deal, and they still had a few territories like the Cheeks territory and some of those places that they were going overboard on gimmicks and stuff. But for the most part, it was the wrestling. It was guys like you and Dory and Billy Robinson and guys like that were sustaining it. And I think it needs to go back to that. But the big problem is there's not enough guys out there that when I go through the roster, even right now on the WWE, even if you had the intention of having legit wrestling, there's not that many guys on that roster that can work, that actually can do what you or Junior or Pat O'Connor or Luthez or Jack Briscoe or guys like that could do. They're few and far between. They got more guys like The Miz and guys wearing blue jeans and guys with weird haircuts and all the other stuff that are they're like the rule rather than the exception, and at some point I think if they're going to survive or whatever, that I think they need to restore that. And I don't know if that's a possibility. Back in the day when you did it, there was all these places like we were alluding to before, like Amarillo and Calgary and maybe Minneapolis and Portland and some of those places, and that's where all the talent was coming from. And you're also sustaining the fans at the grassroots level in all those places. Nowadays, they don't have any of those territories. They don't have any workers, and the only workers they're developing right now are coming out of NXT or whatever, which is, the same. That's Dusty and whoever else, are developing the guys, like the Adam Rose and the Bunny, and that entourage and all that bullshit. But there's not too many workers, and all these other bullshit promotions that are across the country, the backyard promotions or whatever. None of them they don't even realize what wrestling is. They're all trying to be a second-rate copy of any stuff. Everyone's got a costume and a gimmick and a valet and all that other, but most of them don't even know what the hell wrestling is. They don't know how to work a hold or build to a climax or get each other over or any of that stuff. It's all, if you'd even mention that to them, they tune you out. They think you're full of shit, or they think you're living in the past or something like that. But I think at some point they need to go back to that, or they'll, in my estimation, go the way of vaudeville or disco or whatever the hell,
Well, I think a few weeks ago, there was Ric Flair said on the show when we were all together on this same show, and I want to tell everybody you're listening to Heartbeat Radio and Terry Funk, Bruce Hart, myself, Johnny Mantell. But a few weeks ago, Ric Flair said in the dressing room at WWE, somebody asked him for his opinion, and he gave it, and then he heard that same person asking somebody if they should listen to Rick or not. And I think that's really is that a fly on the wall looking down at the product, making a comment about it. To me, I take it as a pretty interesting fact, because if Ric Flair or Terry or Dory or Lou Thez, and I've been in dressing room with Gene Kaninsky and Danny Hodge and all these guys you're talking about, if they said something to you, you pretty much, it was like getting a pretty good check, and it was no doubt it was gonna be cashable and everything. You listened and took that knowledge and put it in your
You were honored.
pocket.
I know if
You were
I was
honored
a young,
to get that.
If I was a young headbanger and Dory or Terry or Harley or Thez or any of those guys even thought enough of me to give me some advice, I was flattered, and it was like the ultimate compliment that they even gave a damn about me or saw fit that I was worthy of giving some advice to, and they anytime you get a guy like Flair or Terry or yourself or whatever giving them some advice, you should shut the hell up, listen and absorb every bit of it, and maybe ask them if there's anything else they can give you, and hopefully they might give you a bit more. But that's the way it used to be in the old days. You'd be riding around after the match on the way, to Lubbock or to Abilene or Regina or wherever, whatever town you were going to, and that's where you got schooled all the time. That's one of the things that's missing, You used to learn as much on the road, just riding around in the vehicles, and you'd be a captive audience. And if one of the old veterans saw fit to even speak to you, you just absorb every damn thing, and it was a hell of a learning process. You used to get schooled, as they used to say, and these days most of those guys don't even listen to the old farts. They tune them out, and and most times there's not even any opportunity to hear or have any of these guys give you any advice. I don't even know who in the WWE today is even maybe fit to be schooling the young guys. I can't think of too many veterans that have.
Very hard to do.
Yeah, it's a different world.
Very hard thing to do. It's right. That's right.
Terry, when you were young, who were those people in those car trips for you? Those elder statesmen that you listened to and heard the stories from and stuff. I mean, I know your dad, but
I watched so many of them in the garage and listened to them late at night, and all of the great ones. All of the great ones, is Mike DiBiase was a great one. Lou, listen to Lou.
Ricky Starr, maybe.
Listen to him, Ricky Starr. I listened to my father. I listened to Bob Geigel. I listened to, as I grew up in the business, and
Old Sweet Hansen and Rip Hawkins, all those guys.
All of those guys.
Ronnie
Every one of them. There's so many of them that I could just go on and on and on and on and on, and
And they were all fiercely protective of the business too. It was anytime you disrespected the business or somebody heard that you were smartening up a mark or doing anything like that. I remember those, and some of them were scary guys like Gordienko and Lindsay, and some of them, if they called you aside to admonish you for some of that shit, quite often you got your ass stretched, or it wasn't just somebody casually saying, "Oh, by the way, I heard you're smartening up ring rats" or something. And quite often they'd maybe haul you out or kick your ass or whatever, But
it's
it was like that. I remember hearing one story about your dad and there's some old actor named Sebastian Cabot who was he was apparently doing an interview in some TV studio, and he was knocking the business, and I heard that Dory Sr. showed up at the TV studio and stretched his ass on the spot or something like that.
Yeah.
But
he did that a lot of times, and but that was necessary at that time, and I really think that because of the era that we're in right now, and because of the people that are running the television shows and doing things, that maybe they're doing more right than they are doing wrong.
Do you ever see, Terry, where they can, adopt some of those old school, like, I've often wondered, like when I came up, and same with you and Johnny, it was just the norm to kayfabe and to defend the business, I remember when I was a kid, I'm sure it was the same with you guys, you'd still have, there was still, is wrestling phony? There was all the skeptics even, my dad told me they were around back in the 20s, guys saying it was fake or it was a work, and that was why my dad would stretch guys or, that kind of thing, but...
Well, it was necessary to stretch people back in because we were coming back to the same towns week after week after week after week, and we could not be entertainment and draw at that time, and come back to the same town. We had to be real, and my father was real as far as I was concerned, and so were those guys we were talking about. I mean, you and I, they were as real as they could be, the toughest son of bitches in the world.
Oh, yeah, I remember many a time as a little kid sneaking down to the dungeon, and you'd get these big football players like Billy Graham, who was broke in, and some of these big muscle heads and whatever, and you'd see them crying like little babies or getting the shit stretched out of them and screaming to Stu or Lindsay or Gordienko or whatever to not spare them or whatever the hell, but that was all just part of the deal back then, and that
it was necessary as far as what they knew, as far as the business was. As far as my father, your father, and the people that were involved in the business at that time, all of that was necessary. They had the respect of the people in the town, and was it a good way to do it? It was the only way at the time. I think that's what you got to look at, because we came back week after week after week, 52 weeks a year into these towns. And the necessary way was that you had to be the toughest people in the world, and that's what wrestlers were at that time.
I've never felt there was as much need as there seems to be for discussing the business in a working sense, or telling the world that so-and-so is dropping the strap at the next pay-per-view or the next WrestleMania. We're going to shoot an angle and have so-and-so fight so-and-so. I've never found, my own opinion, it's like some guy in a card game showing his damn cards. I've never found that was that necessary, or I always thought it was counterproductive. But I still feel that way. But I don't know whether that will ever change. It seems to be this age of open disclosure where everybody's telling everybody who's winning the belt, who's turning heel, who's turning face, who's doing a job, and all the other. And I've never, still, maybe I'm old school, but I still can't frankly fathom the rationale or the...
I think that's a wonderful way to put it. Whenever you put it last deal, there's definitely a difference between me and you and Johnny and the people of today in the business. We are from the old school, and they are from this school. And there is no more, there's very little relationship between the two of them.
At some point, I wonder if they need to maybe go back to old school a bit. Oh, yeah.
I think they need to go back to, well, of course I do, because that's what I loved, and that's what you loved, and that's what Johnny loved. But
I frankly could never fathom, going to all the lengths to shoot a hot angle and have some heat and some heel double across the face or do whatever, but be telling everybody beforehand we're going to do that. It's a complete. I could never wrap my head, and still can't wrap my head around. If you go to all the trouble to have Brock Lesnar fight The Rock at the next WrestleMania or whatever the hell. At no point should you be smart, telling everybody, Dwayne Johnson's coming back and he's going to shoot an angle at Royal Rumble and Paul Heyman's going to do this. And I still can't wrap my head around that mindset, yet I see them doing it all the time, and nobody stands up. And
that's why you and I we're old school, and I think it's the best school. I think it's the most wonderful school. I think they've got a different school that they went to. I think that they grew up not watching the Mike DiBiase's. Those kids grew up watching the Hulk Hogan's, and I have nothing wrong against the Hulk or any of them. It's a different breed of cat that's in the ring. And we grew up watching other people.
There's an old saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I've often heard that, and I still hope that'll happen, where they almost, somebody says, whoa, people actually think this might be for real, or, at times I wonder if that will happen, after they've gone about as far as they can with the gimmicks and the tits and ass and the mock comedies and the bullshit, at some point, what if we actually...
are they going to kill it?
I'm not sure if they have to crash and burn before they can emerge from the ashes, or somebody might open their eyes before the effing plane crashes and say, maybe we got to, let the fans actually, maybe we don't have to tell everybody on the internet or the smart mark dirt sheets or whatever the fuck that it's all at work, or I remember my dad used to, when he was alive, say that at some point they were going to have to get to that level to where people had finally tuned it out. And my dad said that was the biggest reason UFC was getting over, was just because their intelligence wasn't being insulted. They just it was basically just two guys fighting, and people believed it. And my dad said that he said the wrestling had kind of gone that route back in the Jack Pfeffer days, where they deviated so much that, and then it was like the Luthezes and the Dick Huttons and the Mike DiBiase's and the Dory Funk Seniors that kind of took the wheel before the damned thing hit the rocks, and kind of steered it back. And my dad said it wasn't an easy, it didn't happen overnight either. It took a fair bit of re-educating the people. He said the bottom line was that the marks wanted to believe, and you almost had to go back to the wool tights and that routine. There was, in some of the places like Nick Goulas's never seemed to ever, go back anyway. But I remember you guys were a big part of that renaissance back in the late '60s and '70s with, Dory and Briscoe and yourself and Harley and that bunch, and I was just sort of a young headbanger then, but I was like, wow, the wrestling's the main thing again. It had run the gamut of all the gimmicks and the bullshit back in the, and most people think that stuff wasn't around then, but there was more gimmicks and horseshit in the 50s as much then as there was now, with the Jack Pfeffer types and the all the crap, but I'm not sure if there's a few different factors now with the internet and the smart marks and the bullshit that I'm not sure if wrestling can reinvent itself or not. It's hard to tell.
Hey, I'm going to invent something. I got somebody holding that we're going to bring on the air with us tonight. I want everybody to know you're listening to Heartbeat Radio. Bruce Hart is your host. Terry Funk's our guest tonight. I'm the guest sort of assistant here, Johnny Mantell, but I'm going to bring on somebody from the past, Alexis Smirnoff. Welcome to the show tonight. How are you?
Pretty good yourself.
Good
Hello.
to have you, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, and your old buddy Terry Funk. I'm told you guys are old. Yeah. You guys have been down the road many a time.
Traveled the world together.
We surely did.
Enjoyed it.
And I remember the day you used to call me Doobie back in 1974.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I got to tell you something, Terry. Happy birthday, by the way. I know it was last week.
Thank you.
I sent you an email, but anyway. You're exactly right, Guy. What you're talking, it's unbelievable. I got to tell you something, Terry. I got a souvenir from you and your brother, Dory Fong Jr. I got to tell you, one of the best matches in my life that I watched, it was you. It was on a tournament, and it was you against Dory in Japan. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, you remember you went an hour Broadway and you had the people stand. You had the people stand up, and here I was watching you. I mean, you know, I was not a mark. I know it's a work, but I mean, two brothers. I mean, and you had the people stand up. Unbelievable. The people, all the little girl was saying, Terry, 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 Terry. I remember that.
All of the grandmothers would say, Terry, Terry.
Yeah.
Change.
But it was one of the greatest matches I ever watched in my life, and I saw a lot of it. You know, I mean,
I'm gonna tell you something. As I always enjoyed every time that I got into the ring with you, and considered you an excellent performer, and always will.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
And you are. You are.
And well, I learn every time.
We appreciated you coming to Amarillo and staying down there, and this, to be honest, this sounds like I'm some kind of idiot or something, but every night you worked your ass off and gave 100%, and for the $25 shows and for the $500 shows.
You got that right.
You worked the same. You worked the same.
You know, I got to tell you, yeah, I always did work hard, always did the best I could, you know. And another match, then I won't forget, it's you in New York with Nick Foley when you're on a forklift and you're with the fork up front, you know, and you're putting this on him. I mean, you guys were going crazy. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
A forklift, when you jumped on the forklift?
Yeah, yes, it was. And it was all very dangerous at that time and just stupid. But at that time, if you'll remember, Vince was, he wasn't the number one show, as WCW was the number one show at the time, and we were trying to get back in the driver's seat and doing whatever we could to do it, you know, and you know, we did our best to. You know,
another thing too, I spent about 10 years in Japan. Right now I'm in California. I spent about 10 years in Atlanta, and I was talking with Abdullah the Butcher, and he was telling me, then you, with the fork and Abdullah in your arms, back in 1981 when Inuki was taking over a little bit, and you guys need to come back, and you guys start that angle with the fork. That was awesome. And you guys brought back the territory.
You know, that's the funny thing. We were talking about Vince and this and that and everything else, you know, and the things that makes things happen in a business is survival. And
you
it's
got that
whatever is needed to survive is what you're going to do.
Exactly.
You know.
You're exactly right.
Yeah, and we're going to do whatever it is, whether it's forks or whatever it is, you know. And it's but had a lot of great matches with you through the years, and enjoyed getting in the ring with you every time that I did. And that's the truth.
Me too. I really enjoy it.
I don't get to see many of my friends anymore, and you're one of them.
I know. Thank you. I know. I saw you at the Cauliflower Alley, and it was a pleasure to see you. And it's always a pleasure to see you all the time. And by the way, where do you think the business is going?
Honestly and seriously, I think that the business is doing more business now than it ever did, because what you have to consider the business. What is the business? It's the wrestling business. What is the wrestling business? Well, it's Vince McMahon, and it's all the places around the world where wrestling is. But we got to also remember it's MMA too.
Yeah.
And we are they are wrestling. And they are doing big business. We got to remember that, you know. They are wrestling. Yeah. They are wrestlers. They are doing business. So if you take the volume that they're doing in the world today and the volume that WWE is doing, it's astronomical figures. So I think wrestling, I think Vince is going to be around here for a long, long time. And I don't see any end to him. And I don't see any end to the MMA either. You know. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, exactly. I admire those guys too. I like a lot of them. I think a lot of them are great athletes, and a lot of them are good entertainers on top of being great athletes in the MMA.
I think at some point you're going to have MMA and WWE having to almost converge. Like, I think MMA is going to have to work more like wrestling, have angles and storylines and heels and faces and some of that. And at the same time, I think WWE is going to have more serious fighting or more appearance of a shoot or whatever.
I think you're true. I think you're so right there, Bruce.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna come back. I don't think that they and this is the only place that I differ, is I think they're going to come back that way. I think the MMA is going to do things a little more colorful, and I think it needs to. WWE needs to do things a little more legitimate.
Yeah, and I think whoever does it best will merge.
They're coming back. I don't think they'll ever make it together, but I think they both will. They both have to bend back towards each other.
Yeah, at some point, I think Vinny and them need to re-sow the seeds at the grassroots. We were discussing that before, but there's not enough guys out there that can work. But beyond all that, you need to re-sow the seeds at the grassroots with the marks. Like back in the day, there was a hardcore group of marks in every territory, and there was like 30 territories in Amarillo and Florida and, Carolina and KC and Minneapolis and whatever. But those marks were getting 6-7 shows a week, every week in every territory, and you were sustaining and they're bringing their kids and their grandparents and all like that. Like I think at some point WWE needs to keep that in mind, because I know they come to Calgary maybe once every year and a half or something like that, and they used to get 52 weeks a year up here in every town, and the same like down in Amarillo or Lubbock or Abilene or Albuquerque or whatever, every week you had. And I don't know how often they come to Amarillo, maybe once a year or something, but I don't know whether you can sustain your grassroots with that, And I know most of the time when they do come up here, unless it's a TV show or something like that, they don't even they give them a bare bones show, and half the time the matches are walkthroughs. They don't even perform. They just kind of go out, go through the motions, give them a short bullshit match and leave, and most of the fans kind of feel like they've been ripped off, And I'm not sure if you can sustain your fan base with that type of treating the marks or the fans like that, So
Terry, I'm gonna need to let you go, and Bruce also. It was a pleasure to talk to you, Terry, and
no, you
Bruce
can't
also.
go. No, please don't leave us.
Hey, I heard that you retire completely now.
Yeah, I am retired. I am done.
I think Terry was supposed to be working with Mil Mascaras in Japan coming up.
Maybe I forgot about that one.
Okay, Terry, I love you. And I'll talk to you later.
Did you just conveniently forget about the match with Mill, or is that a on and off thing?
I'm going to have to take him on. That's it. I'm going to just have to wear him out over there,
I'm surprised for whatever reason, Vinny's never really, WWE never seems to have ever really established anything with Japan. Every now and then they would bring in a couple of these little Japanese guys and have them get squashed, and they had Yokozuna, who wasn't even a Jap, as a Samoan or whatever, as a mock Jap, but hardly ever do I recall them ever really having any, and especially with Japan, where the wrestling's perceived to be a lot more legit and all, you figure they would have at some point brought some of the Japanese guys that were, guys like Fujinami types or Sakaguchi or Tenaru or some of those guys, and done something, and I'd still think that would be a good direction for them to go now.
I'm in agreement, total agreement, but they have done this with other parts of the country. They've done it with so many different guys from so many different countries, and brought them in and put them over from England to Australia to wherever they might be from, and whenever they go in there with their tours, they go with them, and Japan, I'm surprised that they haven't picked up a Japanese guy, but do they go to Japan that much? Is it that financially profitable to them to even go over there? I don't know.
If I was them, I'd be trying to work, with, say, back in the day with Inoki. I don't know that they need to be taking over, the promotion in Japan. I think, it'd be better for them, and it would serve more purposes if they were working with them, and having, just like in the old days, when
that's not their MO.
No, and that's, I think, been part of their problem. They've, which is what we were talking about before, they've kind of killed the grassroots, because rather than letting places like Amarillo or Calgary or Minneapolis continue to develop talent and be a place that they could send boys when they need to give their faces a rest and do all that, they felt compelled to just eliminate and destroy, bring to their knees all those promotions. And I guess they figured they were a threat or a competition, but I think they need to adopt a different mindset. Like, if I was going to Japan, if I was Vinny, I'd be, all over trying to work with them. To me, I don't know that Vinny's even got enough time or whatever else to go over and establish his own promotion in Japan. It's a lot easier said than done. Better to go over there or would have been in the day with Baba or Inoki and, swap talent.
Yeah,
and
I just think that we're looking at they're a different product. They have changed it so much that they are a totally different product.
I'm not sure if they've changed it for the better. I think if you ask them, I think right now the product they have is not even what they necessarily want, but it's what they're stuck with because they have about 10% of the guys can actually work. The rest are all guys who have been trained in that bullshit NXT abortion, or they're recycled retreads who maybe never learned how to work in the first place, and they have to keep. That's my opinion anyway.
Well, I think that's just a product of the environment. I mean, they don't need guys to be a general in a ring anymore because they have a room full of generals in the back.
Yeah, it's like my dad used to say, you can't have an orgasm when it's all artificial insemination. Most of those guys are not capable of, getting their dicks hard if they tried. That's my opinion of it. But like back in the day, as Terry would tell you, and you would say, Johnny, it was unthinkable to somebody come up and give you a script, and if somebody came up to Dory or Terry or Harley or any of those guys before a match and somebody said you're doing 45 minutes or 60 minutes tonight, and it gave you 20 pages of little stickman diagrams and high spots, they would have told you to shove it back then, but that's kind of the norm down.
But I think what Terry's saying too is back in that day, I know when I first started, and Bill Watts and Leroy McGurk were so gracious to me and fed me guys every night to teach me. And if I had to go out and do 40 minutes with a Moose Morawski or a Vic Rozatani or the Assassins or somebody like that, they took you out and taught you in that 45 minutes. And today it's somebody in the back's teaching you because they're telling you exactly how to do it. And I think that's the major difference today.
Well, the big thing I noticed. The big thing I noticed, just from my casual perspective, is half the guys that are telling you what to do and all that haven't learned, as my dad would say, how to wipe their ass yet. Half those guys have no business giving guys tips on psychology. They're like the proverbial eunuchs in the whorehouse. They know all about it, but they've never done it. They got all these, script writers and smart marks and guys who are barely in the prelims going around telling guys how to work and how to get heat and all this other crap, and half the time they got no business telling anyone anything. And that's a big part of the problem for what I've seen.
I'm in total agreement with you. But yet you look, and here you go ahead and you see these figures on them, and they're doing 15,000 here, 18,000 here, 15,000 there, 20,000 here, 10,000 there, and it just goes on and on and on and on. I don't like what they are doing. I don't like their idea of wrestling compared to my idea of wrestling. But you have to remember that they are successful.
I think.
And I don't mean that.
No.
I like our way much better.
Yeah, I think with social media and all this other, which is tailor-made for the wrestling business, my belief the wrestling should be better than it's ever been by now, with all those things that are at its disposal. Instead, it's struggling to survive, having to reinvent themselves. As I said before, they're not sure whether they want to be a comedy or a soap opera or tits and ass or hardcore. And if you can't define what the hell you are seeking to be yourself, then I don't know whether you stand a great chance of compelling the marks. That's the way, and all too often when I see their stuff, I go like, it's pretty obvious somebody doesn't know what the hell's going on. Like, if you go to great lengths to have them take something seriously, like Randy Orton or Brock Lesnar, and then you got right after that Hornswoggle getting spanked by the great Khali, or you got that Adam Rose and the Bunny Rabbit and a bunch of girls looking like some retreads from the Rocky Horror Show or some horse shit. And,
I want to know, who is Adam Rose? Which
he's the guy who comes out with a lollipop in his mouth, and he has like an entourage, including a bunny rabbit and a bunch of girls that look like kind of overweight skanky hoes and a bunch of other.
I need to tune in and watch that and see who the hell that is.
Yeah, and
that sounds pretty wild.
Yeah, beyond everything else. If and when you do something like
it's a sorority party, I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
This is a sorority party. It's off the campus.
Yeah, and it's not that well orchestrated either. Like my dad always used to say, at some point you should be able to define your purpose, or if you advocate something, there should be some reason or whatever. But half that stuff doesn't appear to be any reason, or has nothing to do with anything, So, but
well, Seinfeld got away with that for years, right? So I mean, it does work in other avenues,
Yeah.
Yeah, even Seinfeld always had at some point that all came together at the end of there. There was some kind of something to wrap it up or
tie it together. Yeah. Wrestling takes on so many faces, especially in 2010 or 2020 or whenever it might be. I mean, it's evolved into something that and it's evolved quickly too, and I'm not so sure that we can even stay up with it. We haven't been able to hold it back or get a rein on it and bring it back to what we like and what we love and what we felt it should be and feel that it always should be, And I think that we have, I love the view that you two guys have of the profession, because it's very parallel to my views of what wrestling should be. And I think we're part of an era, and I think that was a great era. I'm not sure that we're ever going to see it again, and I doubt if we will.
If you were ever giving your old friend Virgil or some of the other, people that have Vinny's ear, advice about just the direction you think they maybe should be taking, and what would you tell them?
I'm not so sure I know where to take it. Now, you got to remember that we have to take it from what it is now and change it. If I had the opportunity to take it from what it is now and change it, I'm not so sure where it needs to go. If it's so nuts now, I mean, it's not nuts, but it's it damn sure is.
Would you be going back to the proverbial middle of the road, or would you be going back more to hardcore, or more extreme, or more in the middle finishes?
That's a damn good question. Could you go back to the middle of the road and be hardcore too?
I think that's a question that's hard to answer unless you're sitting behind the wheel and you see the road and the course you're on. I think that's sort of.
I think I've had that conversation with Terry before, but hardcore, just for the sake of hardcore, doesn't mean fuck all. It's
that's exactly right.
An oxymoron. In the old days, and Terry and I had that conversation more than a few times. Hardcore was just the byproduct of the build-up, and these guys having a a card of Extreme Rules matches or some bullshit like that is,
a
contradiction.
Hardcore to me and hardcore to a lot of guys at the time, whenever it was the word hardcore entered into the business, was just, hey, you go out there and you give the fans their money's worth. You give them everything that you possibly can. And
it was the build-up, if you had a damn cage match or you had blood or you had Texas Death Match or something, it was the culmination of something, and you couldn't do it every night either, And the guys who were trying to do that every night are the guys who crashed and burned, like the Sheik and that, where they're just having juice for the sake of having juice, or having barbed wire matches and cage matches and all that. If you didn't have some pretext or reason to have it, then you shouldn't have been doing it, And
hardcore was giving the people their money's worth. That's what hardcore had different meaning to different people. And to me, hardcore is going out there and giving 100% every night, busting your ass for those fans. If they paid $20, you give them $20 worth of
you
your
got
body.
You got some issue between you and if you're the heel and the face, it's at the boiling point. Then you get color, or then you have to be in a cage, or you have to be lumberjack or whatever the hell. But just having, like, you and I were, I remember, I think it was down in L.A. with that abortion. That was it's one of those, I think it was down in that XPW, but every single match on that card they had barbed wire and thumbtacks and fluorescent light bulbs and swords, and I think it was you and Sabu down there, but by the end of the night they had so much so-called hardcore and bullshit that nothing meant anything. It was like a complete caricature of whatever the hell it was, and I think that was part of the problem that they had in ECW. They got to that point where that's all they were doing was, sticks and barbed wire and juice and stuff, and they lost sight of the, what the hell.
What hardcore is. Hardcore is giving 100% and busting your ass for your business and giving the people their money's worth. Seeing that they walk out of the door at the end of the night and they say, "By God, I loved it. I'm
and I got to come back."
Week. That's hardcore.
I'd like to thank you very much, Terry, for coming on. It's always an honor, and always.
It's an honor to be on the show with you guys, and I love my life. I've loved what I've been. I love what I do. Since I was 5 years old, I always wanted to be a wrestler. I got my wish, and I'll tell you what, I've loved every minute of it. And, I loved all of the people that I have met in it. I've been around, that I've competed against, that have paid $1 to watch me, and that's it. Life has been great.
Terry, if I could send one through the phone, buddy, I'd give you a handshake and a hug, man. Thank you so much for being on with us tonight.
Well, thank you guys for going ahead and having me.
Thanks very much, Terry. I'll look forward to the next time, and give our love to Vicky.
I will.
And Stacy and Brandy.
All right, I
will. Good night,
will.
Terry.
You guys stay out of trouble.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Good night, everybody, from Heartbeat Radio.